Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. It's episode 55 of DS. Written by Francis Swan, directed by Lila Swift. This episode starts off as a where you see a shot at the Seaview Terrace, aka the Carey Mansion, and it's zoomed out. They zoom in. Leland Dan Curtis Productions zooms in, and we go inside the mansion, and we see Roger, Elizabeth, and Sheriff George Patterson. Roger says he remembers the sheriff. Are you? He asks, "Are you here on a local? When you're here on your official capacity?" He says, "Yes, yeah, I would say I am." So he's not here for the liquor, Roger. Don't worry, don't worry. Quentin is a ways away. No. I really, really love how Francis Swan, as a writer, reveals you know, the dead body to Roger, because not just Francis Swan, but Elizabeth, Joan Bennett. She's like, "Oh, Roger," and he's like, "There, Liz," you know. And then Sheriff George Patterson says, we've we've found Bill Malloy. At least we know where to look." And that's when Elizabeth says that he drowned. That as I'm going to play the video now as I'm rewatching, uh, that Bill Malloy is dead. He drowned. That's what gets said to Roger. So you have this unique situation where the sheriff does say we haven't necessarily found Bill Malloy, but they know where to look. And that's when again Elizabeth says Bill's dead. He drowned. Now you're also going to get in this episode that Sheriff George Patterson says we have your sister's word and Matthew Morgan's, and Roger says we haven't found. You said you haven't found it, and this is where Joan Bennett's character Elizabeth tells Roger when Vicky and Carolyn came screaming in the house that it was Bill's body. He was lying to protect us, and that Matthew was lying to protect them. And Roger says, "Surely you don't think we had anything to do with it." This is general reaction, not just by Louis Edmonds, but by the character. This right here, as much as, poking and prodding as Burke Devlin's going to do, and you see Sheriff George Patterson close the doors, and we get our intro, as much poking and prodding as Burke Devlin does, and really the sheriff too, that you got to remember, it's not everything is a guilty or innocent thing, especially the guilty part. Like, though actions speak louder than words, it's also about what you actually really do know from from their character. And Roger says no one knows about this. Who notified the police? Elizabeth said she did. And Meth. Again, general reaction matters. So when Elizabeth says that Matthew pushed Bill Malloy's body back into the water, he didn't want the body saying it was discovered at Collinwood or near Collinwood. Roger's like, why would it's a general reaction, so you can tell this isn't if you're narrowing down not just suspects but association of did somebody tell somebody to kill somebody? The answer here is most likely no. And this episode is a very telltale episode of that for a lot of reasons. A, who does Matthew Morgan work for? He works generally for the Collins family. Who is he generally loyal to? Elizabeth, most of all. But he's also loyal to the Collins family to the degree of, okay, he would do stuff for them without them necessarily asking. Now, This does shock Roger because, okay, you pushed someone's body back into the ocean, and not just anybody's body, Bill Malloy's. To Roger, it's like, why? Like, what? What? Like, why? That lets you know that, if you're narrowing down suspects, your suspect range is still the same, unless you know the answer already, which most who've watched DS do. But if you're coming to Dark Shadows new, what episode 55 does is you're getting the distinction that Matthew Morgan's, and you could tell probably this by the earlier episodes when he finally admitted to Elizabeth what he really did when she confronted him with. We know, I'm not saying Elizabeth would have told Matthew Morgan to push the body back. We know that isn't the case. And even if you didn't know, you know by now. What episode 55 is confirming is Roger did not tell Matthew Morgan to push that body back into that water. Roger did not know that that body got pushed back into that water. That's what this episode is really doing. For all of Roger's faults, we cannot say he and Matthew Morgan are in cahoots. So, even if you still want to put Roger on your suspect list, especially if you're fresh to DS, though I would say no. He's though he is a suspect the way the writers write this. We all know who the person who killed Bill Malloy was. It was Matthew Morgan. But this episode does sort of tell you that Roger's reaction to Bill Malloy's body being A, discovered by Matthew Morgan, and B, being pushed back in is genuine, meaning he didn't tell Matthew Morgan to do it. He didn't know Matthew Morgan did that. He believed Matthew Morgan when he said it was seaweed. All of that. So, and I think my video is skipping here. So, if this comes across as delayed at all, you'll have to let me know. Again, sometimes when you're filming something, there can be a delay on these videos. So. Roger does say all he did was add to the mystery. It'll be twice as many. Yeah. So that the sheriff is indicating that they're going to do an autopsy. They're going to do an autopsy when they find that body. They're going to do an autopsy, and this is where Lewis Edmonds makes him suspect again by having this look of like all crap look and taking a drink of tea. It's tea, and now we see the kitchen, if you will. Yes, my video is sort of hesitating here. Um, you see Sam Evans and Maggie Evans are at the hotel diner, if you will, and he says that Burke canceled his sitting. Maggie says he's going to have gray hairs by the time he gets done. And now Sam is smoking. And you see Sam's right hand is shaking. Now here, we see Sam is smoking right-handed. Then he switches it to his left. So that's really really interesting. Interesting. Yeah, there's some wonky weather around here, so everybody's looking for some Bill. Everyone's worried about Bill Malloy, that he's not the type to go off like that. I love how Catherine Lee Scott is talking and her character. She still has her character doing her routine job work. Um, um, so Maggie questions why would he call Roger when all Roger cared about is if he did Burke's portrait. Um, Again, Maggie has already noticed that there seems to be some connection with Roger and her dad, And you can see the curiosity in Kathleen Lee Scott's character's face. Yeah, she notices that her father returned. Her father referred to Bill Malloy in a past reference, and she corrected him. You mean? And she's like, "You mean he's still here? You're not meaning like the past? Like why'd you say the past tense?" That's what she's basically applying to. As we go back to Collinwood, and and Elizabeth says, "I left word to call you at your office," and he says, "Oh, I've been there," but he goes, "I didn't get the message. He wasn't there." So so sheriff says that Matthew Morgan is with Harry Shaw. It was mentioned in the Harry Shaw was mentioned in the previous episode. And the Coast Guard has been notified. And they're going to do an again. They're going to do an autopsy. You get the hint that they're going to do an autopsy just in the preview, in the scene well before this. It's a law. Roger, if you see a man fall of 12-story body, you know, and he says, "Yes, we do." And person on a 12-story may have been shot before he fell. That's a great line. I am the law. Tell him Dana Elker. He's he's all about the law and order. Yeah, Dana Elker is probably Collinsport's best sheriff, best, I mean, my God. Yeah, he was in a couple movies, and he was in some movies in the 60s. He was in The Sting. That's where I saw him. uh, well, where I first saw him was in an episode of MacGyver. And I saw him in The Sting, and I saw him in this. In that order. In that order. So Sam Evans wants his letter that he gave to Maggie, and Maggie's like, "Nope, I'm not. I'm not giving you that letter that you gave to me." She's like, "Tell me why." And Maggie tells him, "You haven't told me one single thing at all." Yeah, she's like, "Forget the way you've been acting since birth. Evelyn comes back to Collinsport. Forget that you're my father. Forget that I love you." All great character traits here. Everybody is doing a good job of nailing their characters. It's amazing. It's so good. It's criminal. And and Sam's tells her, "Sam, you're holding a pistol from home. Don't worry, Pop. I'm not gonna pull the trigger." She, I like Sam's line. "You might trip a bullet by accident." When did you last see Bill Moore? 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, right here in this room. Yes. Not worried or upset. No. So we discuss business. No, Drew. So Bill Malloy's housekeeper, Mrs. Johnson, is the last person to see Bill Malloy alive, and that she knows that he received a phone call. No, while he was still 12:30 for dead for 11. Roger. Roger said he was supposed to meet Bill Malloy at 11 o'clock at his office. Getting a business discussion. Hmm. The office waited for an hour. Mm-hmm. Not anyone who could verify his times. Mm-hmm. So he does admit that Burt Devlin and Sam Evans can verify those times. So Sheriff George Patterson asks, are you friendly with Burke? He says, "No, we're not. We're not friendly." Uh, Roger says he was honestly surprised that we sent. Yeah, he's lying. He's omitting the truth for sure. Elizabeth's gonna call him on this shit too. Not right here, but in this episode, I promise. Elizabeth will read your ass the riot act quickly, like real quickly. Um, so so Elizabeth is saying he may seem perfectly normal to Roger, but she knew Bill was upset. Jackson, he had an important decision to make. Maybe he made it. That decision. He says we can't overlook the possibility of suicide. And Roger said it never occurred to him. Rosa says she doesn't think so. You can't overlook the possibility. He tries to Roger tries to use Nick Coulter as a ploy for Bill Malloy's suicide, and Elizabeth, no, he was fine with it. If I would have brought Bill Malloy, and Elizabeth corrects and says no, Bill Malloy was more interested in the fishing float. No, yes, we'll do. He had a decision to make. So Elizabeth refuses to believe Bill Malloy killed himself. You're right, Liz. He wasn't the type to leave any loose strings lying around. That's what Sheriff George Patterson says. So lots of mayo. So what you get in this episode is, when eventually the Sheriff George Patterson is going to leave Collinwood and he's going to go to the diner. But after he leaves, Liz says, okay, now you tell me the truth. What really happened? And he says, well, there are ears in this house. And she goes, well, presently we're alone. There's no one else here. And he goes, well, presently my nerves are shot. I'd like a drink. So they go into the drawing room. Doors don't get closed, by the way. And they have this discussion. She goes, omitting the truth is same as lying. You didn't exactly tell the full truth of that story there, and Liz knows it. And Roger says, and they have a discussion that you know somehow you know Bill Malloy wanted to clear Burke of the manslaughter charge, that somehow Sam Evans was involved. But Roger says Sam Evans had no involvement. And Liz believes him. Liz has no choice but to believe him. It and the only real reason for this is Elizabeth says, yes, I must believe you, because, and she's not saying that because she's brainwashed, or she's believing that because she wants to believe her brother. Okay, you did admit to me certain facts, great. And I know what you're saying somewhat is true because she was at the trial. Again, there's things too that Liz doesn't know about. The one thing, I guess, in Dark Shadows that you could say it it doesn't really get explained is why why Burke Devlin never really faced his other accuser. He faced his primary accuser, Roger Collins, but Roger was in the car. So there were two people already testifying against Burke, Laura and Roger, and maybe that's so he faced them. He said no, and Sam Evans was the final sort of straw to stir the drink, sort of, if you will. We know that, if you're a DS fan, you know that Sam is the guy who went before the judge. But somehow Burke never knew that. Burke never got to face Sam in court. Uh, that's never really explained why he never got to face Sam in court. It's just we know Sam went to the judge, and told the judge, "Oh, I saw Burke Devlin drive in the car." So I guess three people against one, it'd be like, what's the point? That's three. That's now three people, and Sam Evans wasn't a known alcoholic at the time. He wasn't. He slowly became an he became an alcoholic after all that, and his wife dying, obviously. Again, he needed the money from Roger. He needed the money to treat his wife's illness. Again, we don't know what that was either. I know I'm jumping a bit. I'm not trying to. But also, what episode 55 does really well is, you know, again, Liz wants. I'm just explaining what Liz did not know about, too. Liz did not know that Roger made this side deal with Sam. Roger legitimately bought paintings from Sam. I think that's the thing, too. If Roger doesn't come home with any paintings and he departs with money to Sam Evans, that would look suspicious. So he has to depart with money in a legal way where it doesn't raise eyebrows. Well, Sam is a painter. He buys some of Sam's work. That's enough money to help Sam with his wife's, treatments. His wife dies sometime later, either, probably right after the trial, if I remember correctly. This episode, we know Bill Malloy is dead. The sheriff eventually comes to the dining room area, if you will, and Maggie and Sam are in there, and Sheriff George Patterson looks over at Sam. And then the phone rings. And when the phone rings, Maggie answers it because, she works there. And she says hello, and she's talking, and they ask for Sheriff George Patterson. She says, "Sheriff, it's for you." And he goes over, and they're talking. And he goes, "You'll have to hold on that coffee, Maggie. It was the Coast Guard. They found Bill Malloy's body. He's dead." And the look on Sam Evans' face, like, oh. And Maggie's face is more, oh my God, in tears. Kathleen Lee Scott does a really great job of explaining sadness. Sam Evans' look is, oh my God, am I in trouble? So again, I've talked about how the writers and actors do a really good job of painting the suspects. You have, your suspects primarily, three of them are Roger, Sam, Matthew Morgan. Now, they're going to add a fourth suspect, which I didn't really thought that made much sense to do it when I first watched this at the time. I get why they do it, to sort of add some to add some drama to Vicky in Vicky's life, to add more sort of doubt to the fire, if you will, for her, because you want to give characters as much doubt about an individual as possible. Okay, how can we paint doubt in Vicky's mind about Burke? Because she hasn't. It's not that she's had much doubts about Burke. So how can we paint doubt in Vicky's mind? Oh, let's suggest through Victoria that Burke might have been responsible for killing Bill Malloy. I want to be clear. They don't do that in this episode. That's a ways off. But I will say that I get why they did it. But doing it was like, well, that doesn't really make sense because Bill Malloy had everything to gain, or sorry, Burke Devlin had everything to gain by Bill Malloy being alive. It would make no sense for him to kill him. Um, but I get why they did it. So with this episode, the sheriff's announcement isn't to the audience; it's to the people in the room. And the sheriff saw. The sheriff could. He's trying to get everybody's reaction. Sam Evans sort of turning away, and Maggie Evans turning away is different because we see their facial features, and I think that Lila Swift does a really good job of getting everybody's facial reactions, not just on camera, but the camera angles we get in this episode to get them are really, really cool. I'm not saying it's unique, it's not necessarily, but I really love how she did it here. I love how we get Sam's reaction is like, oh, and we get Catherine Lee Scott's hand to the face isn't overreacting. It's spot on. It's so goddamn good. If you want to go back, if you go back again, because I know there are probably people who aren't DS fans who come to this channel. If you really, really want to watch someone not over, these actors don't oversell to me. They never oversell their characters. So hearing the news that now Bill Malloy is dead, we know Liz knows. We know Roger knows. We know what Roger knows about Matthew, that he pushed the body. And his reaction is spot on because his reaction is genuine. Like, why? Why would he do that? These reactions are so spot on by the actors and actress, Catherine Lee Scott, Joan Bennett. Everybody's reaction is so, so good. It's just really good. I love how when Catherine Lee Scott burns her hands to the face, you could sort of see the tears coming, um, you know, almost, and they cut it. Great job. Because again, and what's important too is this day is far from over yet. This day is not over. We are just probably going to lunch in this episode. So this day is not over yet. So episode 56 is going to continue this day for this episode, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense of all that. I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction review of episode 55. Really, really great job. Just the facial features and the reaction of everybody to Bill Malloy's death so far is amazing. But it's something else. You guys are going to have to go check out episode 55. All right. You guys have a great day.